Welcome to Cheat Sheet Tales, where secrets slip, lies unravel, and the truth always has a twist. Real stories, raw confessions, shocking betrayals. Drop a comment if you've ever caught a red flag too late. Now, let's get into today's tale. At 19, my family said I was a burden with my disability. My brother whispered, "You'll never be independent." I invented a device that helped thousands. At the launch, I said to the people who said I couldn't, then pressed play on the slide. I'm 27 now, female, live in Seattle. I grew up in Scranton, Pennsylvania. Yes, that's Scranton. Quiet steel town, working class, where families have been living on the same street for decades, and people know your business before you do. Ours was a modest house, same faded siding. It had when my parents bought it in the early 90s. It was always clean. My mom made sure of that. But inside, it was cold in more ways than one. When I was 16, everything started to change. I started dropping things. My hand shook a little. Walking in a straight line became harder. I'd trip for no reason. Doctors ran tests, more tests, until the diagnosis came: Friedreich ataxia. If you've never heard of it, you're lucky. It's a rare inherited disease that affects your nervous system and movement. It's progressive, degenerative. It slowly strips away your coordination, your balance, eventually, your independence. There's no cure, no treatment, just a ticking clock. At first, my parents didn't say much. My mom, Marin, just kind of shut off. She wasn't cruel, at least not openly, but the warmth disappeared. She started treating me like I was already half gone. Conversations became instructions. My father, Graham, a mechanic who mostly kept to himself before, managed to become even quieter. He'd glance at me like I was something that made him uncomfortable, like my condition might rub off on him if he got too close. My younger sister, Lila, didn't know how to process it. She was only 12. She stopped talking to me at all for a while. And then there was my brother, Elias, 2 years older than me, tall, athletic. Everyone said he was the golden child. Football in high school, good grades, scholarship. People loved him. But behind closed doors, Kalen was different. He never hit me or anything. That would have been too obvious. But he knew how to wound with words. Whispers, remarks, looks. "You're a fucking burden, you know," that he muttered once when I couldn't make it up the stairs fast enough and asked for help. "You'll never be independent, Mira," he whispered another time. "Face it." I remember exactly where I was when he said that. Right outside the bathroom door. About to roll in. My hands were already shaking, and after he said it, I just stood there frozen. I didn't cry until he walked away. I sat on the toilet staring at my lap, just hollow. My world got smaller after that. I stopped talking much. My friends disappeared, some out of awkwardness, others because my energy to chase them down just faded. My social life dried up like a puddle in the sun. The idea of college, my parents shot that down quickly. They didn't say no directly. They said things like, "We just don't want you to get your hopes up." Or, "Who's going to take you to class every day?" Or, "Online classes are probably better for someone like you." Someone like me. But I had a stubborn streak. Quiet, sure, but fierce. While they were counting me out, I was secretly applying. I used my disability grant, wrote every essay myself, stayed up late on the old laptop we shared, pretending I was watching YouTube when I was actually pouring out my soul in applications. And I got in. Washington State University accepted me into their online electrical engineering program. It wasn't the biggest, flashiest name, but it felt like freedom. I told my parents I was moving. I had saved enough from my disability payments, scholarships, and tutoring Lila in secret. I found a studio in Spokane. They didn't offer to help, didn't even ask if I'd be okay. My mom just said, Well, don't call us if something goes wrong. And so I left. It was hard. Jesus, it was so hard. I had no car, just my wheelchair and a folding ramp. My neighbors didn't talk to me. The snow made things 10 times harder. But I was free. I was away from the voices that said I couldn't. Classes were brutal. Not the content, but the logistics. Group projects, I ended up doing them myself half the time. Professors were nice enough, but you could tell they didn't know what to do with me. I had to advocate for everything. Notes, extra time, lab access. Then came my 3rd year. Everything changed. My neighbor Agnes lived across the hall. She was in her 60s, used a wheelchair too. Though hers was due to a spinal cord injury from an old car crash. She was feisty, called me kiddo, even though I was in my 20s. One day, I didn't see her in the hallway like usual. I knocked. No answer. I waited until nightfall, still nothing. Finally, I called the landlord and asked them to do a welfare check. They found her collapsed near her couch, dehydrated, scared, and alone. She had fallen and couldn't reach her phone. She was on the floor for 8 hours. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing her face in the ambulance lights. That's when the idea came. What if there was a way to alert people, family, 911, whoever, immediately when something like that happened? Not a clunky button or something you have to activate, but something automatic, seamless, smart. That's how the idea for Sora was born. I called it Sora, Supportive Organic Responsive Aid, a small wrist-wearable device with motion sensors, accelerometers, heart rate detection. It could learn the difference between a fall, a collapse, or just someone shifting in their chair. It would send a real-time alert with location and vitals to assigned contacts and emergency services. I didn't sleep for weeks. I sketched out the plans, taught myself embedded systems programming, 3D printed prototypes from the university lab, and cobbled the first model together in my apartment with trembling hands and solder burns. Meanwhile, back in Scranton, my family imploded. My mom filed for divorce. My dad emptied their savings and left. Kaylin got married, didn't invite me. I found out through Facebook, photos of him and his wife on a beach in Mexico. I remember staring at the photos, my half-built prototype in my lap. I cried once, then I got back to work. Months passed. Sora's early model started gaining attention. I shared it on Reddit, funny enough, and a few disability forums. A local hospital reached out, then a startup incubator in Seattle. We got funding, testing, trials. We launched a beta program. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive. One woman said it saved her father's life. Another said it helped her autistic son when he collapsed from a seizure. Messages poured in. And finally, after 2 years of development, setbacks and sleepless nights, we planned the official public launch. It was held at Seattle's Museum of History and Industry. Not huge, but perfect. Press came, medical reps, patients, investors, even a few university mentors. I wore a soft green blouse, trembling less than usual that day. I rolled onto the stage. I looked around. No mom, no dad, no Kaylin. Not that I expected them. I started slow. Thank you all for being here. This moment isn't just mine. It's for everyone who's ever been made to feel like they don't matter, like they're a burden. I paused. To the people who said I couldn't, I said, steady as steel. Then I pressed play on the slide. The screen lit up with images. Elderly people smiling, kids wearing Sora bands, nurses giving testimonials, emergency alerts activating in real-time simulations. Applause started slowly, then it grew louder and louder. Afterward, I went backstage, cried quietly in the green room, not from sadness, relief, pride, maybe both. 2 days later, Kaylin emailed me. No hi, no how are you, just saw the article. Congrats, I guess. Didn't expect that from you." I didn't reply. What was there to say? Then Lila called. She is in college now. We hadn't talked in years. She cried on the phone, told me she had always felt guilty that she saw what they did, that she was sorry. We're rebuilding now, slowly, carefully. But my mother, she sent a card. That's it. A card. "Proud of your work. Hope you're well." No return address, no number, not even her handwriting. It looked printed, like a Hallmark employee wrote it, not her. And I realized I didn't feel anything, because I didn't need it anymore. I kept the card for a while, not because it meant something, but because I couldn't decide what to do with it. It sat on my kitchen counter for a week. I'd glance at it in the mornings while making tea, or when I rolled past it on the way to bed. Eventually, I tossed it in the recycling bin. Not dramatically, just like you would with junk mail. That simple act felt more freeing than any speech I could have given. Things got busier after the launch. We secured another round of funding, and I was brought on full-time as the lead engineer for product development. I hired a small team, people I trusted, many of them disabled or caregivers themselves, people who got it. I remember sitting in one of our early design meetings, listening to Anita, our UX specialist who had early onset Parkinson's, talk about button fatigue and thinking, this is what it should have been like all along. This is what support looks like. We made Sora smarter, more intuitive. We created an app interface that was fully voice-activated. We built integrations with smart home systems. We translated the software into 5 languages. And we didn't stop. And we didn't stop. Every time we shipped an update or got feedback from someone saying the device saved a loved one's life, I felt this quiet swell of something. Not triumph exactly, not revenge, just worth. Like my life was finally becoming its own story instead of a reaction to someone else's. But in the background, my family kept trying to slide back in, not all of them. Lila and I had started doing monthly Zoom calls. She even flew out to Seattle last Thanksgiving. We had dinner together, just the 2 of us. She helped me cook. We talked about everything and nothing. At one point she said, "You know, I think about that Christmas when Mom made you stay upstairs because you couldn't help set the table. I was so mad but didn't say anything. I remembered it. All of it." I told her it wasn't her fault. She cried anyway. Lila was different. She had grown. You can feel when someone is sincere. Kalen, though, he started sending messages more often. At first it was little things. Congrats on the Forbes mention. Nice interview. Then it became more personal. Wish we could talk. I miss you. One day I got a photo. It was him holding his newborn daughter. This is Sienna, your niece. That one landed harder than I expected. I sat with it for a long time, staring at the tiny baby face on my screen. I wondered what kind of father Kalen was, if he told his daughter bedtime stories, if he'd tell her she could do anything, or if he'd whisper to her that she'd never be enough. Part of me wanted to reply to say, congrats, maybe even she's beautiful. But then I heard his voice in my head again. You'll never be independent. So I closed the message and never opened it again. Then came my mother. She emailed first, a one-liner. I saw the segment on PBS. You looked healthy. I'm glad. No, I'm proud. No apology. Just the same vague neutrality she always defaulted to. Then a week later, I was wondering if we could talk. I'm in Seattle for a few days visiting a friend. It floored me. I didn't respond right away. I forwarded the email to my therapist, Ellis. I'd been seeing him virtually since my final year in college. He's one of those quiet types, but sharp, kind in a way that's not performative. He said, "You're not obligated to let anyone back in just because you've healed. Recovery doesn't mean reunion." That stuck with me still. I stared at that email for days, reread it. I even elisafted a response once. Sure, we can meet at a cafe near downtown, but I deleted it before hitting send because I realized something that took me years to understand. Closure isn't something someone else gives you. It's something you give yourself. So I let her message sit. I never wrote back. And it's not like my life is perfect now. Far from it. There are still mornings when my hands won't cooperate, or days I need to use my voice software because typing is too hard. But the difference now is, I'm surrounded by people who don't treat me like I'm broken. My team. They know I have limits, but they also know I have vision, creativity, and fire. My friends. They text me jokes, send me TikTok, including me without awkward pauses or pity. And the users of Sora, they're my people. They're the reason I keep going. We just got approval to distribute in rural clinics across Montana and North Carolina. A doctor in Asheville wrote to me personally to say, "Your device saved my father's life last week. Thank you." I cried when I read that one. Ugly cried because the kid who sat on the bathroom floor at 19, paralyzed with shame after her brother whispered she'd never make it. She made it. And she did it without asking for permission. Things began to move even faster after that. We hit our production target ahead of schedule and signed a partnership with a national chain of senior living communities. I was invited to speak at medical technology expos in New York, Toronto, and even Zurich. Me, the girl who once thought she'd spend her life confined to a Bielisum while her family lived their lives around her. I didn't just make a name for myself. I built a life, the kind no one ever thought I could have, and then came the invitation. The local chapter of the American Biomedical Engineering Association, an organization I'd once followed from the sidelines, was holding their annual awards ceremony in Seattle. Sora has won Innovative Health Technology of the Year. They were giving the award to me. They asked if I'd like to make a speech. The event was going to be streamed nationally. Dozens of hospitals, universities, and advocacy groups were attending. It was, in many ways, the kind of moment you Elysium about. But for me, it was also something else, a full circle moment, because I decided to do something I hadn't done in years. I sent an invitation to my mother, to Kaylin, to Lila. 3 identical letters, typed, sealed, and mailed. I didn't send them out of kindness or some desperate need to reconcile. I sent them because I wanted them to see, not to gravel, not to apologize, just to see what it looked like when someone they dismissed, devalued, and discarded stood at the center of a room filled with respect, admiration, and pride. Lila called me a week later. "I'll be there," she said, her voice soft. "Do you want me to come early?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. "I'd like that." She flew in the night before. We had dinner at a little place near Capitol Hill, shared a bottle of wine, and talked about life. About how different things could have been if we'd been raised in a house where compassion came first. About how, in our own ways, we'd both made it out. The night of the ceremony, I wore a navy blue LSS that matched the lights on the stage. My hair was curled for once. Lila helped me with makeup. She said, "You look powerful." And I felt it. As I rolled onto the stage, I saw them. My mother, Kaylin, sitting in the second row, LSS stiffly, eyes locked on me. The applause died down as I reached the podium. My hands trembled a little, but I'd stopped being ashamed of that a long time ago. I took a deep breath. When I was 19, I began. Someone close to me whispered that I'd never be independent, that my life would be one long list of can'ts and shoulds. I remember that moment like it just happened. The sting of it, the silence after. I carried those words like a second skin for years. I looked out at the audience, let my gaze rest, not linger, on the faces of my family. But then I realized something. I didn't have to carry them. They weren't mine. They belonged to the people who gave up on me before I even started. I clicked the remote in my hand. The screen behind me lit up with video clips, Sora being used in clinics, in homes, in rehab centers. Real people smiling, hugging loved ones, standing again with assistance. Life saved. Dignity restored. To the people who said I couldn't, I said, my voice clear and unwavering, thank you. I paused. You taught me the difference between people who limit others and people who lift them. I chose to become the second kind. The applause that followed wasn't polite. It was thunderous. I stepped off the stage with tears in my eyes, and Lila waiting with open arms. Later that evening, as the guests mingled and photos were taken, I saw Kalen approach. He stood there awkwardly, unsure if I'd even acknowledge him. I didn't know, he said quietly, voice barely above the music. You didn't care to, I replied, calm, firm. There's a difference, he nodded, eyes down. I'm sorry. I don't need your apology, I said. I just hope your daughter grows up hearing different words than the ones you gave me. He swallowed hard. She will, I swear. I nodded once, then turned away. I didn't need closure from him. I already had it. My mother never came over. She left before the event ended, but that was fine too. Her absence was more honest than her presence would have been. That night, Lila and I walked along the waterfront, the city lights reflected in the bay. She said, "You didn't burn the bridge. You just built your own road." I laughed, and I like where it's going. The next morning, I got a message from the CEO of a major medical device firm. He'd watched the speech. He wanted to license Sora for international use. We had done it. And no one could ever take that from me. Not the brother who once whispered I'd never be independent. Not the mother who treated my diagnosis like a family stain. Not the father who vanished. They would all live with the memory of that night, sitting in the audience as the person they dismissed stood taller than any of them ever had. Not out of vengeance, but out of vindication. And that was the best revenge of all. Revenge of all.